So how do you keep your aquarium water looking crystal clear? Well, that's one of the most common questions we get on the channel today, and in today's video I'm going to walk through a handful of tips and some steps you can take to maintain your aquarium and keep that water looking crystal clear. So let's dive right in. So when it comes to keeping your water looking crystal clear, there are two things that are really important to understand as foundational items, and that is the nitrogen cycle and filter media. When you're setting up a brand new tank, the first uneaten food and fish waste in that tank will break down and create ammonia in your tank, which is harmful to fish. But once given enough time for that beneficial bacteria to grow, the bacteria will break that ammonia down into nitrite, which is still toxic to fish, and then finally it will break down into nitrates, which is far less harmful to fish. When a new tank is first going through this process, it's totally normal to experience a bacterial bloom and have cloudy water for a few weeks. If your tank is in this scenario, I would just recommend regular maintenance, and within a few weeks things should balance out in the tank and clear up nicely. But outside of just having a new tank, there are some key ways to manage water clarity, and that really starts with the filtration. One of the main tips for keeping crystal clear water is to have strong filtration. If you have a big tank or maybe a good amount of fish, but you have a small filter, you're likely to run into cloudy water if that water isn't turning over enough times per hour. And you really can't have too much filtration in my opinion unless that water flow is blowing around your fish. In my 180 gallon here, I have 2 canister filters that consistently polish the water and maintain the nitrogen cycle. In my 150 gallon here, I have a sump with a very strong C-shaped pump, so it accomplishes the same things as the canisters. But even if you have a hang on the back or a sponge filter, they should all be able to do the job if you have big enough filters for your tank. If you're struggling with cloudy water, maybe consider adding another hang on the back or canister filter to your tank and see if that helps. And then when it comes to the setup of these filters, they will usually have mechanical, biological, and chemical filtration. Mechanical is arguably the most important for clear water, as the sponges, filter floss, and pads will catch most of the particles in the water column. So if you do add that next filter, maybe put some filter floss in there to catch most of the particulate matter and see if the water clears up over time. Polyfill is a great option. It's one of the most fine mechanical filtration options, so if you're finding that you still have particles in your water, try adding this to your hang on the back or a small canister. Otherwise, just use varying coarse sponges in the big filters, and you should have adequate mechanical filtration. And then when it comes to biological media, this will usually be porous bioballs, ceramic rings, and cubes that grow beneficial bacteria. This is still very important for the overall health of your aquarium, so if your ammonia and nitrite levels are already at 0 but your water is constantly cloudy, maybe consider more mechanical filtration in that next filter or add it into some of the existing ones. And then lastly, chemical filtration is totally not necessary, but I always use it and I do see a difference in my water clarity. I found that it really puts the cherry on top of everything else I mentioned in this video. My favorite is ChemiPure Blue and Green, which always seem to make a slight difference when I add a new bag into the filter. And you do have to swap these out every 5 to 6 months or so and remove them from the tank if you ever have to add medications, but overall I think it is worth it. Another great use for chemical filtration, as an example, is if you add a new piece of driftwood to your tank. They will usually turn your water a tea color with tannins for a while. And although some people might like this look, if you do want to remove those tannins, chemical filtration will clear that up almost immediately. Otherwise, just do your regular water changes and those tannins will eventually dilute and be removed from the tank. Another big recommendation for keeping crystal clear water is to add wave makers to your tank. Especially in cichlid or marine tanks, water flow will enhance your filtration and keep debris from accumulating throughout the tank. So instead of having extra debris breaking down and creating a mess in your tank, your filters will be working even harder. Another side tip is if you angle that wave maker towards the top and break the surface, it can oxygenate the water, which is very beneficial to fish and can replace things like an air stone that usually I find unsightly. The next big category here is just tank maintenance. It should be pretty obvious, but if you have fish producing waste and you're dropping in food every day, that the tank will eventually become cloudy if it's not regularly maintained. This includes water changes and filter cleanings. On my cichlid tanks, I do water changes of around 30 to 50% every 7 to 10 days, depending on the tank. This keeps my nitrate levels below 20 parts per million consistently, but don't blindly take my water change percentages and apply it to your tank. Test your own water and do your own water changes as needed to keep those nitrate levels low. If you have live plants in your tank, they can help consume those nitrates as well, and you may not need to do as many water changes. In many of my tanks, I have to do water changes since most of my cichlids would eat and destroy those plants. For instance, my 150-gallon tank does have many live plants and the nitrates stay very low, so I only have to do water changes about once per month. I am lucky that the cichlids in this tank don't really go after the plants. The other aspect of tank maintenance is just filter cleanings, which is always the worst, but it is a necessity. After cleaning out sponges and filters, I will always see a noticeable difference in water clarity. Just give it a few hours after a big cleaning and it should clear up nicely. Also, cleaning out your filter can improve the water flow through that filter. For instance, on my FX6 canister filter, I noticed that the flow was coming in pretty slowly. I was well past my cleaning schedule, so once I did clean out that canister, the flow came back really nicely and things cleared up really quickly after that cleaning. And just another side tip is if you're setting up a new tank or doing water changes, try to avoid disturbing that substrate too much, as that will usually cloud out the water temporarily. And then maybe the biggest tip in this video is to not overfeed your fish. It's one of the most common things in the hobby today, and I see it all the time. It's one of the biggest factors leading to cloudy water. For most fish keepers, and especially beginners, I would say they are very likely overfeeding. I posted multiple videos lately showing how much I feed my fish, which I'll leave in the description below, and people always comment saying they are surprised that I don't feed more. But when it comes to fish growth, water quality is more important than the quantity of the food anyway. For most of you out there, you could probably cut your quantity down by about 30 to 50% easily, and your fish would do just fine. A few other things you can do to keep your water looking crystal clear is to dim your lights a bit so that the algae isn't getting out of control, and sometimes those dimmer lights make your water look a little more clear. And also, cleaning your glass is a huge thing. You'd be surprised what water stains and fingerprints can do to make a tank look dirty. During my maintenance routine, at the end I'll use one of those gloss cleaners, as you definitely want to avoid anything like Windex or household cleaners. And another thing with your light, I like to move them to the front half of the tank, which almost instantly gives the tank a clearer look and a pretty cool effect. Give that a try. And then when it comes to some of your chemicals and additives, occasionally water clarifiers like Seachem Clarity can help a bit, especially on a new tank, but they really aren't necessary in my opinion. So in summary, if you're looking to keep your aquarium water looking crystal clear, I would definitely focus on strong filtration, keeping those filters clean, doing regular water changes, maybe focusing on mechanical filtration, adding a chemical filtration option if you want to maybe put that cherry on top. Adding a wave maker is a great idea. And maybe the most important thing we discussed in the video is don't overfeed your fish. So I hope you found that information helpful, and if you have any questions, leave those down in the comment section below. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.